In the last lesson, we introduced the idea of cause and effect, and we're now going to look at arguments where either it concludes that something is the cause of something else, or the conclusion of that argument relies on that being the case, that something caused something else. But for now, for a moment, let's put aside the broader argument and just look at this cause and effect relationship and what it entails. When we say something caused something else, what's the relationship between that cause and effect? So let's say we have a proposed causal relationship between two things. We want to study what that relationship entails, and here it's between sugary beverages and metabolic syndrome. And you really don't even need to know what that is to sort of think about what a causal relationship entails, so just put aside that for a moment. It's easy to imagine that this is a lot like the conditional relationships we looked at earlier. So you could just diagram it like something like sugary beverages, then metabolic syndrome. But a causal relationship is both less and more than a conditional relationship. Conditional relationships simply tell you that when this happens, this other thing happens. Always, every time, no matter what. But causal relationships are a bit more murky. So what are the factors that makes for a causal relationship? Number one is correlation. When you say that one thing is the cause of another, you need to see the two observed in proximity to each other somehow. So, for example, here, if you never saw people drinking sugary beverages and then getting metabolic syndrome, there would be absolutely no correlation between the two. That's pretty basic. If there's a cause and effect relationship, the two things need to coincide somehow. Number two is temporality. Whereas with conditional relationships, the necessary condition doesn't necessarily need to come after the sufficient condition. In cause and effect relationships, the cause always needs to precede, come before in time, than its effect. So here, drinking sugary beverages would need to precede getting metabolic syndrome in order for us to say that one caused the other. If you never saw this coming before, then you couldn't argue that it's causing the other thing. If anything, it may be the effect that's in fact the cause, so that relationship would be reversed. So causes always come before their effects. Of course, if somebody drank sugary beverages before getting metabolic syndrome and then continued drinking sugary beverages, you could still argue that sugary beverages was the cause. But if the cause doesn't come before the effect, that argument that one caused the other is dead in the water. The third part of the cause and effect relationship is mechanism. And it may not always be known, but there has to at least be some plausible way in which the cause could bring about the effect. The proposed cause could bring about the proposed effect. For example, here, maybe drinking sugary beverages changes people's bodies in some way, and that brings about metabolic syndrome. There's at least some plausible means whereby this might bring about this. If that mechanism isn't there, and we see that all the time, like with superstitions, then it's very suspect that the cause is actually causing the effect. For example, say a batter likes to always retie his left shoe before going up to the plate, and he believes that that causes him to get more home runs. Well, there's no real mechanism of action there. I guess you could say he's maybe giving himself a little confidence boost, but an outside observer would find that very suspect that one thing is causing the other. So when we're talking about causal relationships, they need to have these three characteristics. And if any is absent, it's really going to throw the cause and effect relationship into serious doubt. Okay, read the text lesson and we'll elaborate further on these concepts.